The Korean War began on June 25th, 1950, when around 75,000 North Korean troops had invaded past the 38th parallel that was between North Korea and South Korea. The reason why the Korean War even happened in the first place was because at the end of World War II, when Japan surrendered to the Allies in 1945, Korea was liberated from the Japanese colonial rule, only to be divided between people that supported capitalism and the people that had supported communism. Why the United States joined the Korean War. The reason behind the United States' participation in the Korean War was because of the belief in the domino theory, which was a Cold War era policy that stated that once a communist government arose, it would cause a worldwide spread of communism. Statistics. There were roughly 6.8 million American men and women who served during the Korean War period. During the war, there were 54,200 deaths to Americans in service during the period of hostilities. Of these, 33,700 were actual battle deaths. Major conflicts and controversies of the war. The Battle of Osan was the first major engagement between United States and North Korean forces during the Korean War, and the battle occurred on July 5th, 1950. The battle resulted in a victory for the North Korean army, which was alarming to the United States, who realized how unprepared they truly were to fight in this war. The Battle of Bloody Ridge. The Battle of Bloody Ridge, or also referred to as the Battle of Edson's Ridge or even the Battle of Raiders Ridge, was a conflict between the United States and the North Korean army that began on August 18th, 1951 and ended on September 5th, 1951. The reason it is referred to as the Battle of Bloody Ridge is because it is commonly known as one of the most brutal battles in all of the Korean War, which resulted in more than 10,000 casualties in total on both sides. The Second Battle of Seoul. The Second Battle of Seoul is one of the most significant and major conflicts in all of the Korean War. The reason behind this is because it turned North Korean forces away from the city of Seoul, successfully recapturing it for the United States and the South Korean forces. Due to their success at recapturing the capital of Korea, the South Korean government began to execute its own citizens who they had believed to have sympathized with the communists, beginning one of the most controversial topics of the Korean War, which was the genocide of civilians. Another example of the horrendous acts that were committed during the Korean War would be the Bodo League Massacre. This was a massacre and war crime acted out by the South Korean government against communist and suspected sympathizers that occurred in the summer of 1950. There is no exact number of how many people died during the Bodo League massacre, but many historians and experts suspect that there were around 310,000 civilians that had died by the South Korean government's hand. When you thought this couldn't get any worse, the South Korean government made many efforts in order to conceal the massacre and ended up concealing it for 40 years. Survivors were forbidden by the government from revealing it, and if they did reveal it, they would be called communist sympathizers and be put to death or tortured. By the end of the war, it is estimated that as many as 3 million Koreans, at least half of which were civilians, died in the war. Home front of the war. Majority of the U.S. citizens were upset and did not support the joining of another war, considering that World War II was only 5 years prior to the beginning of the Korean War. Due to the people of the United States being very upset at joining another war, many peaceful protests erupted across the nation, saying that they should not have participated in the Korean War and that it was the wrong decision that the government made when they decided that they should participate. With the war ending in a stalemate, South Korea ended up adopting democracy and capitalism, while North Korea remains one of the most stringent and isolated communist states in the world. In terms of economic development, initially the North was ahead of the South up until 1960, where the South had developed many new technologies that they could export out into the world, allowing them to increase their economy greatly. When the American soldiers had returned from the Korean War, they were not welcomed with open arms as they were for World War I and World War II, with many people referring to the war and the soldiers as the Forgotten War. One of the positives for the United States as a result of the Korean War was that the GDP, or gross domestic product, had improved. The reason this improved was because production in the United States and its factories had increased majorly. In conclusion, then and now, the American people have very little understanding of the significance of the Korean War, nor did they understand the horrors that were taking place in it or the hardships that our soldiers had to endure while serving in Korea.